Hello and welcome to another episode of Learning to Draw. Moving on from shoes in the last video and now on to feet. And as I didn't do very well with shoes, I'm sure I will do even worse now, so should be fun.
Here we go. I'm going to start sort of putting in the really rough guidelines and talk a little bit about how I'm going to draw the feet attached to Miki. Now, the main thing here is getting a sense of how long the feet should be in relation to the body. And that's why when you're doing rough guidelines, you're not stuck really with any line that you make. You can kind of go back and change your mind. I'm just staying really pretty rough here and putting in kind of like a rough triangular shape. You know, almost anybody could draw this. It doesn't take that much skill. Just to get a sense of how long the foot should be from front to back. Okay, now of course it doesn't look very good right now, but later on I'm going to be able to tighten it up and get the details in. But one thing I want to talk about is how long from front to back should the foot be. It's kind of tricky to work that out. My theory is that measuring from the knee down to the base of the foot, if you measure that distance, the distance from here, the heel to the toe, is going to be a little more than half of that distance. I think if you did exactly half, it might be a little short, maybe just a touch longer than that. Anyway, that gives you some sense of. Now I'm going to move on to the other leg here, and this is kind of a technique that artists use to create a 3D effect of someone standing. You get one foot kind of pointed a little bit out toward the viewer. And again, this is just rough stuff. These are not my final lines, so I don't have to get too uptight about it, but there's going to be a slightly more complicated shape coming out here. Anyone who's tried to draw feet can testify to the fact that as the foot turns toward you, it becomes harder and harder to draw. So this gives you a sense of me starting out in just a rough way. And that I wanted to do it at this distance to show you how I determined the length of each foot in relation. Let's pull all the way back, because this is the way, if you were drawing it, you would be looking at the entire figure. And this is not so much a video about how to draw legs. It's more about only the feet. I may do another video that's about the legs. But as you can see, hopefully, the size of the feet from front to back are hopefully in pretty good proportion to her body. I think when you're doing manga style drawing, you probably will go on the side of
maybe slightly easier. If you can see the rough guidelines that I did there, the first thing that I'm going to do is take this line here, which is coming at a pretty good angle. It's not straight up and down, it's just a little bit off to the left, and curve it down as we reach the heel. Okay? This is our first step towards making this look more like a real foot. There's a line coming across the bottom here that follows that original sort of flat triangle line. But when you get to this point right here, the kind of continuation of that line, right here is when it has to kind of bend a little and come down just a bit. And then towards the end, as it reaches near the toe, it curves just ever so slightly back up again. Now the truth is this is even darker than I would normally do, but I want it all to show up nice and clean on the video. So I'm going to move now to this other line of the foot, and what you're really focusing on here is maybe the distance between this line here, the width, and how it narrows. It's a sort of a gentle curve as it comes down toward the toes. Keep it kind of gentle, and then it gets quite straight here as it comes down towards the end of the toes. All of this stuff not so tricky, I don't think. Here comes the hard part, the toes. The big toe here is the one that's closest to us. Again, I'm not a master at this kind of stuff, so I'm just sort of doing my best, but it curves around up to a point here, and then it has this kind of, I hope this is showing up, it has these kind of two lines here, kind of straight here, and then kind of slanting down. It's like the toe is made up of a short line here and a slightly longer sloping line there. Then, with the foot in this position, you can kind of get away with these other toes being kind of tucked behind. You're not really seeing them so much. And it's mainly that big toe that is what we're really seeing when the foot is in this position. So there you go, maybe not the most beautiful foot ever drawn, but it's looking more like a real foot, hopefully, than before. This sort of arc here behind the heel getting a sense of where that falls is just something you develop over time. It's closer to the heel than it is to the front. And then you'll see the sort of ankle. Finding where that belongs is also a bit of a trick. You certainly don't want it down near the bottom of the foot. You don't want to go too high up towards the calf or whatever that's called. You find over time this sort of perfect zone, hopefully, where that is going to be. I don't like to make that too dark. I'm going back in and sort of lightening it up a little. So there's that one, the easier of the 2 feet. Now comes the trickier of the two. Let's start over here. There's going to be a bit of a bump here, I think, for where that ankle is going to come in on this one. But let's not worry about that too much for right now. The line is coming straight down to a degree, and then, just like it did over here, it's curving off to the left. Very similar, really, to the heel over here. Only in this position, this line is not going to be horizontal. It's just dipping a little bit, slanting down just a little bit. Then you're going to have another line coming, kind of sloping down here and curving just a bit as you reach the area where the toes are going to be. I'm going to stop. The toes are probably the hardest part. I'm going to come over here. And this line, again, is sort of vertical, then gently sloping down at an angle. And you get a kind of a straight line that comes out here, the top of the foot. Now we get to where the toes are going to be. As I did with this toe over here, there's kind of 2 parts here, kind of a straight part here, then kind of coming down like this, curving to make the big toe. And finally we can I would sort of put in a light box shape here where all these other 4 toes are going to go, because the foot kind of breaks into these 2 groups of the big toe and then the 4 other toes. And then you can just pretty much divide that into the 4 toes. I've done this in other videos. When you want to do perfectly the same, it's helpful to do the middle line here, because it's easy to see the middle, and then you find the middle of those other 2. And I'm kind of making these bend down a little bit. I mean, there's like 2 angles there. I don't know if it's showing up in the video, but... And then little by little, you just sort of curve the bottom for each toe. And there you have it, hopefully a reasonably good foot.
Well,
I
there
might go
you
back
are.
in and sort of add a little more.
The first one
to
I
this
drew,
ankle
I
here.
feel, wasn't too
But I
bad
think we pretty much
actually,
got it.
but the second one,
Maybe add a little
as you
shade.
can tell, was rather
This is ended up being so
terrible.
dark, actually, that I almost don't need the Prismacolor at this stage. At least for the purposes of the
And
video, it's showing up almost as dark
My
as the Prismacolor would.
eraser
But hopefully I'm
isn't
taking you step by step through
terrific,
the process.
so
Now,
I don't
thankfully,
feel
since
like
this isn't erasable,
rubbing
pencil,
it
I'm
out
looking at this toe, it's looking a little
over
big to
and
me,
over
and,
again and trying to fix this, so I'll try again in the future. But feet, I feel like if I can master getting feet right, I can get anything right in art, because feet is so tricky. I wonder, it's gonna be a challenge, but if you want to stick around, be my guest, and I'll see you in the next video.